Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this press availability hosted by the Childcare for Every Family Network, 0 to 3, Moms Rising, and the National Women's Law Center. We're really grateful for all the reporters that could join us today. Just a quick reminder, the Q&A will be at the end of the speaking order, so if you have a question, just be sure to hold it until then. And we'll go ahead and get right into it since I know everyone has a busy day and week. So I want to go ahead and pass it off to Matthew Melmed, who is the executive director of 0 to 3, where he's established himself as an internationally recognized leader and tireless advocate for the health and development of babies and toddlers. Matthew, I'll hand it to you. Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you. Thank you very much. As noted, I am Matthew Melmed, the Executive Director of 0 to 3. And with me today are Senator Patty Murray, the ranking member of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Joel Ryan, the Executive Director of the Washington State Association of Head Start and Early Childhood Education Assistance Programs, Carolina Reyes, a MomsRising storyteller and a child care provider, and our colleagues at Childcare for Every Family, the National Women's Law Center, and MomsRising. We're here because the Trump administration and the congressional majority are creating chaos for America's babies and toddlers and their families. During the 2024 campaign, childcare was a hot topic. Parents hoped that their needs would finally be met. Instead, they faced long wait lists, sometimes over a year, skyrocketing costs, and widespread childcare deserts where no options exist. Families need solutions. But what's happening in Washington now is only adding fuel to the fire. Just weeks ago, the administration froze federal funding, throwing Head Start centers into disarray. Parents panicked, fearing their children would be lost. Then they fired key staff at the Administration for Children and Families, the very people who know how to keep programs like Head Start and Early Head Start safe and running. And last night, the House passed a budget that will likely slash Medicaid, SNAP, and other safety net programs that keep babies healthy and families afloat. Medicaid alone covers more than 40% of all the births in the United States, and it is a lifeline for millions of parents and children. These cuts would leave families with nowhere to turn, piling on debt and jeopardizing vital early intervention services. Yet the House approved a budget that will direct the House Energy and Commerce Committee to cut at least $880 billion over the next decade, with Medicaid being the prime target. But the administration promised to expand childcare and make life easier for families. How does freezing funds, firing experts, and gutting healthcare help families? It doesn't. Meanwhile, we know that in a child's first years of life, the brain is growing at lightning speed, over 1 million new connections every second, making this a critical time in development, early development, that's impossible to get back. With childcare programs and families already stretched thin, these policies threaten to bring down the very safety net that keeps our youngest safe, nurtured, and ready to learn. To explain more about what's at stake in Congress and how this budget crisis could hurt our kids, I'm honored to introduce our next speaker, Senator Patty Murray, Vice Chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee. For years, she has been a fierce champion, and I mean a fierce champion, for babies and the critical and crucial federal programs that help give them a strong start in life. Senator Murray.
Matthew, thank you. And thank you so much to everyone for having me and for all that you do on this issue. It is really great to join everyone today. You know, in a shock to no one, a billionaire like Donald Trump and his boss, Elon Musk, the literal richest man on the planet, have absolutely zero clue on why childcare is so important to families and to our economy. And despite the president's grand campaign promises to lower families' costs, Trump and Musk have done absolutely nothing to increase childcare openings nothing to lower childcare costs, and nothing whatsoever to address the childcare crisis. Of course, when it comes to helping themselves, they are gearing up to give themselves and other billionaires trillions in tax cuts. But when it comes to helping parents and kids, a big fat zero. And really, even that is being far too kind, because all they've done so far is make the child care crisis worse, and their plans for what to do next are even more frightening. When Trump and Musk are haphazardly freezing Head Start funding, then promising to turn it back on, and not actually making sure that that happens, and throwing Head Start centers and families who count on them into complete chaos, when they are firing left and right without rhyme or reason the very workers who help childcare providers and Head Start centers keep their doors open and who help ensure the kids in their care are safe. They are turning their backs on families and making the child care crisis that much worse. President Trump and Elon Musk have reportedly already fired one-fifth of the workers at the federal Office of Head Start and Office of Child Care. And it's clear now that they plan to keep firing federal workers with reckless abandon. These are folks that help all of our states keep child care and Head Start care centers open. There's no mistaking it. Trump and Musk's agenda will have devastating consequences for our families and for our economy. Because despite how important Elon Musk thinks he is, the reality is that working families are actually the ones who are the backbone of our economy. And mom and dad can't go to work if they cannot find childcare. And of course, if things weren't bad enough, Republicans' next big priority involves ripping healthcare away from our kids and families and seniors to shower even more tax cuts on billionaires. Childcare doesn't become more affordable when parents and their kids get kicked off Medicaid. Trump and Musk are preparing lifeboats for billionaires who can already buy their own yachts, but ripping away support for families who have been struggling for years to keep their heads above water. They are telling their fellow billionaires, whatever you want, and telling parents and kids, tough luck. Well, as you all know, I have fought my entire career for childcare from my very first day in politics. And I'm going to make sure that everyone knows I am not stopping now. And with that, I am delighted to turn it over to another great advocate from Washington State, Joel Ryan, who is out there every day being loud to make sure that our kids and our families get the basic support they're owed under law. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to log off, but I really want to say how grateful I am for all of you and for everyone who day in and day out does everything they can to help us with the child care crisis that we have. So thank you. And Joel, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you to everybody who's joined us today. I'm Joel Ryan. I'm the Executive Director of the Washington State Association of Head Start, ECAP. Here's where I'd like to start. I think a lot of you know the benefits of programs like Head Start. Matthew from 0 to 3 mentioned as well early Head Start. These are proven programs that we know from research that for every dollar you invest in a program like Head Start, taxpayers end up saving up to $7. They save money because kids are more ready for school. They need less special education services. They're more likely to graduate from high school and college. It's really an incredible program, and it has the goods to back it up. It has the track record. You might not know it also supports the entire family. I'll give you 2 examples from the state of Washington. I have a family that is in a Head Start program. She lives in a residential treatment facility. That Head Start program is working with her and the entire family to make sure that she's sober. She's been sober for 6 months now. She has her kids back. That saves taxpayers money and makes a better life for her and her kids. Head Start programs also support kids who are experiencing homelessness. About 15% of the children in Washington State and our Washington State Head Start programs are experiencing homelessness right now. A lot of our Head Start programs work very closely with those families to move them from transitional housing or living in a car to actually finding permanent housing. Sometimes they even help pay the first and last rent They connect them with resources in their community. It is truly an incredible program that's multi-generational, multi-tiered. As you've heard over the last few weeks, Head Start and programs like Head Start that support kids and families have dealt with the chaos and confusion from the Trump administration's funding freeze. It's meant that in some cases, up to 25% of my Head Start programs, even as late as last week, were trying to get into the payment management system. I still have a program in Seattle that has not gotten payment for February, something that typically takes 24 to 48 hours. The Denise Louie Center in Seattle has not been able to draw down their money. You might be wondering, how does it impact Head Start kids and families if civil servant people are let go at the Office of Head Start? But let me give you some examples. A lot of our Head Start programs need to make updates because of licensing. You want to make sure a place is safe for kids, sprinklers, playgrounds, all the things that make sure that kids are having a great and safe experience. If they can't get approvals to move forward with a grant, if they can't get their dollars from the Office of Head Start because there are fewer staff, those are kids that aren't being served right now. So it actually directly impacts laying off 68 Office of Head Start ACF staff, definitely impacts Head Start families who are the ultimate customers at the end of the day. The other thing I did want to mention, and something that Matthew and Senator Murray mentioned, is Medicaid. In the state of Washington, Head Start programs serve a little over 13,000 kids. 12,868 of those children are receiving Medicaid services. So that is a direct cut. If you take health insurance away from low-income families, you're taking it away from Head Start families. We have close to 1,700 kids in Washington State these are Head Start kids with chronic conditions. I spoke to a parent last night that has a child with juvenile diabetes, so type 1 diabetes, that has to have regular treatment and support. Are we going to pull those services away from that family, that kid that needs that service? I have another family I spoke to. She has a child with a disability, and she has to go every week for occupational therapy and supports. Are we going to take those services away from Head Start families who are struggling? When it comes to early Head Start, 75% of pregnant moms in the state of Washington that are utilizing early Head Start services are utilizing, those moms are on Medicaid. So these programs are intertwined. The Trump administration is clearly out to bully and attack and try to dismantle programs that support low-income families, all in the name of giving a giant tax cut to millionaires and billionaires and large corporations. But there are real families that are impacted by this, whether that's in the state of Washington, and these are little tiny kids and their parents, and these are people impacted across the country. So we are here today to sound the alarm about what's continuing to happen to Head Start, the impact of these staff cuts that really impact direct people and families. And as you heard last night in terms of Medicaid, that has a real impact on some of the youngest, most vulnerable kids across our country. So I'll turn it over now to Carolina. We'll share her experience. But thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Hello, my name is Carolina Reyes, and I'm a proud member of MomsRising and an advocate for early childhood education and care. I'm also director of Arco Iris Bilingual Children's Center, a childcare program in Laurel, Maryland, that is also a Head Start partner. As an early educator, I am terrified of what the federal funding freeze, mass firing of the administration for children and families, and potential cuts to federal childcare and Head Start will mean for my program, my students, and the families we serve. Thank you so much, Senator Murray, for your leadership on this issue and for the chance to share my story today. I'm passionate about what I do because I have seen the difference quality early education can make in a child's life. At Arco Iris, we take pride in fostering a lifelong love of learning in our students and equipping them with the skill they need to succeed in kindergarten and beyond that in school. There is no shortage of research on the importance of brain development and in the child's first 5 years. There is also no better feeling than watching young children gleefully gather for story time, finally master their ABCs, gain confidence they need to try new skills, or learn to solve conflicts when they are with their friends. The care we provide enables our students, parents, to be in the workforce and provide for their families. I am proud that because of Head Start, we are able to offer these opportunities to families who otherwise would not have access. But the past month has been harrowing for childcare providers. First, President Trump froze federal funding that threatened the heart of the grant we rely on to serve kids and families. Now, Elon Musk is gutting the federal departments that ensure those grants are distributed properly and in a timely manner. This is scary. And throughout all of this, Republicans have threatened the slash federal funding for childcare and Head Start. Programs like mine operate on razor-thin margins. I don't have endless reserves or any reserves to pull from in funding is delayed or slashed. Any interruptions could impact my ability to pay my teachers and force us to close classrooms. So we don't want that. So many of the families we serve struggle to make ends meet. Suddenly losing care could force them out of work and put them in crisis immediately. Again, this is a very scary scenario. Let's be clear. If Trump and his allies got childcare and Head Start, programs will close. Kids will miss out on essential early learning opportunities. Parents will lose jobs and struggle to put food on the table, especially with food prices going so high. Our economy will suffer. This isn't a game. The decisions lawmakers make have real consequences for families and communities. This is chaos. It's causing enormous harm to our country's most vulnerable children and families. I am so grateful for leaders like Senator Murray who are fighting for working with families in these critical moments. Now more than ever, we all need to speak up and fight for the childcare and early learning system for our children and that our country deserves. Thank you so much. And we are very happy to be unifying voices around our country to be able to make these voices rise and to really make sure that we are doing something. Our children, our families need it. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Carolina, and thank you to all our speakers, Joel and Matthew as well. At this point, we'll open it up for questions from the press. If you're a member of the press and you have a question, you can feel free to raise your hand. You can also feel free to drop a question in the chat, which I can read, or if for whatever tech reasons, we all understand a struggle. If you'd like to just text or email me a question, please feel free to, and I'm happy to read it. We're going to go ahead and start with Anya. Anya, I'm going to allow you to unmute and just ask that you say your outlet, and then if there's a specific person you'd like to direct your question to, if you do that as well. Thank you so much. And Anya, go ahead.
Hello, thanks so much for arranging this. So my question, maybe it's for Matthew, which is that Project 2025, as we know, calls for the full elimination of Head Start. Given the firing of 1/5 of federal workers in this office, are you still concerned that this will happen? And then the second report. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I think it is very clear that Project 2025 calls for the elimination of Head Start and Early Head Start, programs that have a wealth of research in terms of showing the impact on healthy development and enabling children at risk to be ready for school and ready for life. The firings that are occurring that are not strategic in nature, but rather arbitrary, in the offices of Head Start, Office of Child Care at the federal level appear to be a first step in creating disruption and dysfunction, and are likely going to lead to more dismissals and even greater dysfunction. And when that occurs, it creates the opportunity to make a case that, well, why do we need it in the first place?
Anya, is it okay if I add something to that?
Yeah.
I the one thing, this is Joel from the Washington State Head Start Association. Today, I'm actually at a convening of Head Start parents from across the country who are advocating for their kids and their families. Very excited to be able to join them. I agree with Matthew that Project 2025 is a real threat to Head Start as well as to other programs that we all care about here. But I will say this, what we have is parent power. We have parents all across the country, like Carolina and others, who are speaking up, making sure their voices are heard, speaking to their lawmakers, and of course, speaking out to the media. And I also agree with Matthew that the one thing that Head Start has going for it is we have great research, we have great data, we have a great track record, and we have a lot of bipartisan support in Congress. So I think the combination of parent power, a combination of having a good story and strong track record and story to tell, is at least in our favor. But the reality is, I'm glad we're doing these kind of events because I think we all know that Donald Trump is a bully and he's picking on, in this case, little kids. And what bullies don't like is when you stand up to them. And so that's what we're doing today. I hope we continue to do that and make sure that we speak out and get our voices heard. So, but thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anya, and thanks, Joel and Matthew. If others have a question, please go ahead and raise your hand or drop it in the chat. Either works great. We're going to go to Claire next. Claire, if you could just say your outlet and who your question's directed to.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. This is Claire with you. I'm from the Seattle Times. Joel, I wanted to ask you about the Denise Louis Center in Seattle. You said that they haven't gotten a payment from the federal government in the month of February, like at all, or could you elaborate?
Yeah, they have not been paid for February at all. You know, I thought, and Claire and I have talked extensively about these issues over the last few weeks, and I assumed everybody was through the payment management system portal. They were able to get into the portal, but they have not drawn down their money yet. So it's been at least, you know, I think they said from the end of January to now, they still have not received payment. And so at least that's a news.
Just a quick reminder, the Q&A will be at the end of the speaking order. So if you have a question, just be sure to. Sorry about that. I don't know.
Yeah.
You should be able to go ahead, Joel.
Yeah. So Claire, if you heard me, the Denise Louis Center is still struggling to get payment. And I'm happy to follow up with you and connect you with them as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire, for the question. And thanks, Joel. If anyone else has a question, go ahead and raise your hand, or as I mentioned, you can drop in the chat or text me. I haven't checked my text, but I'll do that now. Any other final questions from members of the media? Claire, do you have another question? I see your hand raised.
Yeah, if it's okay, I just wanted to clarify the scale of the cuts at the Office of Head Start and the Office of Child Care. I've seen 25% and 20%, but do we think at this point it's 20% at each office?
Matthew, do you want to take
my understanding, which we can check, is that it was 25% in the Office of Child Care and 20% in the Office of Head Start. But we can go back and check those exact numbers.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew, and thanks, Claire. We'll follow up with more exact details. Appreciate the question.
Should also point out that that's not just the folks that are in DC. It's the folks that are in regional offices around the country, and folks who are responsible for looking at health and safety, who are responsible for approving competitive applications that are submitted for funding services. These are not, people who are just pushing paper.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matthew. Next, I see Mariah from the AP. Did you have a question?
Am I off mute? Okay, yes, I see
Yes.
that I am. So I know that Schoolhouse Rock did not cover budget resolutions, and they are pretty confusing. So I was wondering if you could explain why this budget resolution, which does not actually talk about Head Start or CCBDG, how it could end up impacting it, and if there are fears that it will either be eliminated or significantly cut.
It's a rather complicated process as to what reconciliation effectively covers and what is covered through the other aspects of the federal budget process. I think it's important that you could get lost in the legislative mechanical details, but the reality is that we're looking for this federal fiscal year that we're now in. That started October 1st. We still do not have an approved budget for that year. We are existing on what's called a continuing resolution. That budget and that continuing resolution affects non-defense discretionary funding in a very, very big way. If there is not agreement, the government could shut down, which will create even further dysfunction, or there could be, by the end of April, an across-the-board automatic cut that's going to be put in effect that will affect all government programming. So, gather families and babies and toddlers are not living in the various buckets that of congressional jurisdiction, but the combined impact of all what they do will have very, very severe adverse consequences for babies and for their families.
I would add too, if when we talk specifically about Medicaid, already Head Start parents have a hard time accessing health services. Could be to get dental services. It's very difficult to find dental services. Mental health services are often challenging because of very low reimbursement rates. The Head Start program does a lot in terms of health. They do screenings with kids. They support the entire family in finding medical homes. As I mentioned, out of the over 13,000 kids that are served in the state of Washington, close to 1,700 of those kids have chronic health issues. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we have children who have juvenile diabetes. Unfortunately, we also have a number of kids who have adult onset diabetes, even as preschoolers, because of some of their health conditions, disabilities. We have 18% of the kids in Head Start in the state of Washington have pretty significant developmental delays and disabilities. And those are kids that depend, and their families depend on Medicaid. So if you slash that program, you are taking away health services for both kids and their parents as well. I would also note, I just got an email while we're doing this from Politico that the Trump administration plans to do even further reductions in staffing at the federal government, which will clearly impact HHS and I'm sure the Office of Head Start and ACF. So this is really, while this might sound like a relatively small number of staff that are let go, this is just the tipping point, right? There are more staff that will be let go in the months ahead, and this will really have a direct impact on Head Start families, whether it's technical assistance, whether that's oversight, monitoring, and making sure kids are safe, or it's to make sure that kids are getting services because grants get slowed up and gummed up by the system. So the ramifications are large, and unfortunately, it seems like it's just starting.
And Claire, to your question, the vote last night itself does not force a specific cut, but it very, very clearly directs the House Energy and Commerce Committee, which oversees Medicaid and Medicare, to come up with $880 billion worth of cuts over the next 10 years. Medicaid is where those cuts are going to be coming from. So again, we shouldn't get caught up in the sort of intricacies of the process. We are it's very clear now that what the expectation is in terms of the amount of cuts and where those cuts should be coming from.
Thank you so much, Matthew. We unfortunately at the end of our time. So if you're a reporter on the call and we didn't get to your question, please do not hesitate to reach out. I have dropped my email in the chat, and the wonderful folks at 0 to 3, Moms Rising, and the National Women's Law Center are always happy to answer your questions, and we are more than happy to forward and connect you with Senator Murray's staff as well. I would also like to remind folks a recording of this call will be circulated. So if you have any questions about the remarks at the top of the call, you can reference that recording. And with that, I'd like to thank our wonderful speakers again, Carolina, Matthew, Joel. Thank you so much for your time and appreciate all the reporters that joined us. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.